Season 1 of House of the Dragon opens 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, where the Targaryen dynasty on the Iron Throne of Westeros is at its peak, and dragons still roam the sky. As King Jaehaerys Targaryen nears death with no living male sons to name his heir, he convenes a great council to help him name his successor. They choose to pass over Jaehaerys' eldest grandchild, Princess Rhaenys, to appoint a male ruler, Jaehaerys' eldest grandson, Viserys. Years after Jaehaerys' death, King Viserys is also without a male heir, though he does have a loving relationship with his headstrong teenage daughter, Rhaenyra. Without a son, Viserys' current heir is his brother Daemon. Viserys' Hand of the King, Sir Otto Hightower, hates Daemon for his undiplomatic ways and penchant for violence, and insists that Viserys find a better suitor for the throne. Otto does have some reason to be concerned, as Daemon uses his ally and sometimes paramour, the White Worm Mysaria, to command her network of spies to advance his schemes. When Viserys' wife Aemma becomes pregnant, Viserys is confident that he will finally have a son and throws a massive tournament in celebration. During the tournament, Rhaenyra and her best friend, Otto's daughter Alicent, both become enamored with the young knight Criston Cole, who bests the great warrior Daemon in both jousting and melee. Unfortunately, Aemma falls ill and Viserys urges the maesters to perform an emergency surgery, killing his wife but saving his son. When that son Balon dies mere hours later, Viserys is left an emotional wreck over his decision that cost him his great love. Daemon mocks the death of Balon, calling him heir for a day, before being confronted by Viserys. When Daemon calls his brother a weak king who is merely Otto's puppet, Viserys banishes him from King's Landing and officially names Rhaenyra as heir to the throne. The lords of Westeros obey their king's command and swear fealty to Rhaenyra as heir, though choosing a female successor leaves many questioning Viserys' decisions. Having officially named Rhaenyra his heir, Viserys then tells his daughter about a prophecy from the first Targaryen king, Aegon the Conqueror, of an unstoppable deadly threat from the north that could only be defeated by a Targaryen sitting on the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra is also now allowed to use her voice at small council meetings, but is constantly ignored by the other members. Rhaenyra is allowed to choose the newest knight for the Kingsguard, an honor which she bestows upon her crush, Sir Criston Cole. Although her father is seen as a decent king, he is also viewed as weak and slow to action. Rhaenyra believes the Targaryens are strong dragon riders who should instill confidence and awe in their people. Meanwhile, Otto forces his teenage daughter Alicent to console Viserys in his grief. Viserys' sister Rhaenys and her husband, the Master of Ships Corlys Velaryon, want the recently widowed Viserys to marry their daughter Laena. The Velaryons and Targaryens are both from the original line of dragon-riding Valyrians, and therefore have a long history of allegiance. Instead, Viserys chooses to marry Alicent, fracturing her and Rhaenyra's friendship and infuriating the Velaryons, who turn to Daemon to propose an alliance. 3 years later, Daemon and Corlys lead forces in the Stepstones to defeat the villainous Crab Feeder, whose evil alliance known as the Triarchy have been attacking Westerosi ships and supplies. Daemon proves himself in battle to upstage his brother and win the support of the other Westerosi lords. But instead of basking in his victory, Daemon is swayed by his love for his brother and returns to King's Landing to reconcile with Viserys. Back at home, Daemon is also reunited with his niece Rhaenyra, who he has a great affection for both familially and romantically. Viserys and Alicent now have a young son Aegon, while Alicent is pregnant with another. Despite now having a potential male heir, Viserys assures Rhaenyra his intention to keep her as his successor. Though in secret, Otto schemes to have his grandson, the young Aegon, usurp Rhaenyra as heir. Viserys stresses to Rhaenyra the importance of marrying her to a powerful political ally, and so Rhaenyra is forced to see many potential suitors, including Jason Lannister, the twin brother of the politically cunning Tywin Lannister. Rhaenyra has no interest in her many suitors, and when Daemon encourages her to explore her sexuality, she seduces her childhood crush Criston Cole, despite his Kingsguard vow to never take a romantic partner. When Viserys learns of his brother and daughter's growing fondness for each other, and Daemon's encouragement of Rhaenyra's independence and sexual liberation, he accuses Daemon of wanting to marry Rhaenyra to one day claim the throne for himself. And so Viserys banishes his brother once again, exiling him to the Vale to live with the wife wife he was forced to marry out of duty, whom he subsequently murders to take control of her family land. Viserys then forces Rhaenyra to marry Laenor Velaryon, the son of Rhaenys and Corlys, to mend the rift between the houses. When Rhaenyra accuses Otto of manipulating the king, Viserys removes him as hand and replaces him with the good-intentioned Lionel Strong. Having ruined his honor for love, Criston offers to run away with Rhaenyra to start new lives together in peace, but Rhaenyra turns him down, offering to be Laenor's wife in name only, while taking Criston as her lover. Criston turns down the offer and is heartbroken, harboring a newfound bitterness for the woman he feels stole his honor. Otto warns Alicent that her sons pose a threat to Rhaenyra's claim to the throne, and therefore Rhaenyra will always be a danger to their family. Criston becomes a trusted ally to Alicent, and the two encourage a bitterness toward Rhaenyra in each other. As Rhaenyra and Laenor prepare to marry, Laenor confesses to Rhaenyra his secret homosexuality, and they both agree that their marriage will be one of only strategy and convenience. At their wedding, Laenor's secret lover Joffrey speaks to Criston, thinking they are both in the same situation of being paramours. But Criston sees this as blackmail and a threat to his public honor, and brutally murders Joffrey in front of the entire wedding reception. 10 years later, Rhaenyra and Laenor now have 3 sons, Jace, Luke, and Joffrey, but all 3 have dark brown hair instead of the silver blonde hair of a Targaryen or Velaryon. Otto and Alicent insist to the ailing King Viserys that the children are bastards, but Viserys refuses to believe this and publicly supports his daughter. Secretly, Rhaenyra has been having a years-long affair with her lover Sir Harwin Strong, the son of Viserys' hand Lionel. The spiteful Criston goads Harwin into a fight, publicly accusing him of fathering Rhaenyra's bastard children. This dishonorable confrontation leaves Harwin disgraced, and he is forced to bid Rhaenyra and his secret children farewell to return to his family home of Harrenhal alongside his father Lionel. Meanwhile, Otto has further corrupted Alicent against Rhaenyra, and she is now confident in her beliefs that her eldest son Aegon should be the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Alicent confides in Lionel's scheming son Larys of her desire to see her father Otto reinstated as Hand of the King. To prove his usefulness to Alicent, Larys hires assassins to burn down his family home, tragically killing his own father and brother to ensure Otto is renamed Hand of the King. Elsewhere, Daemon is now happily married to Corlys and Rhaenys' daughter Laena, and they have 2 young daughters, Baela and Rhaena. They live in Essos in peace, all confident and powerful dragon riders. Unfortunately, Laena has complications during her 3rd pregnancy and dies, leaving Daemon a depressed widower and single father. Rhaenyra and Daemon, both grieving their lovers, are reunited after years apart and begin a romantic relationship of their own. At Laena's funeral, Alicent's 2nd son Aemon claims Laena's dragon Vhagar as his own. This devastates Rhaena, who believes her mother's dragon should rightfully be hers. Rhaenyra's children come to their cousin's aid and confront Aemon, resulting in an altercation that ends with Luke slicing out Aemon's eye with a knife. Alicent is enraged by this act and goes to her husband to seek retribution, but Viserys refuses to act against Rhaenyra's children. Alicent instead finds comfort in her father Otto, who has been reinstated as Hand of the King. As Alicent and Otto gather support to have the male Aegon sit the Iron Throne, Rhaenyra seeks help from Daemon to rally support for her own claim. The two help Laenor fake his own death in order to run away to live a life in peace with his new boyfriend, allowing Rhaenyra and Daemon to marry each other and strengthen their position in the Targaryen dynasty. 6 years later, the aging Viserys has grown weak and sickly, leaving Alicent and Otto in charge of his political duties. The young Prince Aegon spends his days drinking and sleeping around, despite now being married to his own sister Helaena, who is also now the mother of his young children. Meanwhile, Criston trains Aemon to be a skilled and ruthless warrior. With everyone aware of his impending death, Viserys' entire family comes to his side and puts on a front of reconciliation. Daemon even helps Viserys keep his crown on his head and show strength in public to the residents of King's Landing, proving that despite years of strife, the brothers never stopped loving each other. Over a family dinner including Viserys, Daemon, Alicent, Rhaenyra, and all of their children, the nostalgic happiness is interrupted by the antagonistic Aemon mocking Rhaenyra's children as bastards, inciting a fight between all of the children that must be interrupted by Daemon. That night, as Viserys begins to succumb to death, he speaks with Alicent, thinking she is Rhaenyra, and rambles about Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy of a northern threat and his desire to support her claim to the throne. As Viserys finally dies, the mistaken Alicent believes that it was her husband's dying wish to support their son Aegon as the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Before Viserys' death can be made public, Otto and Alicent convene the small council and scheme to have the young Prince Aegon usurp Rhaenyra as the new ruler of Westeros. When small council member Lord Beesbury refuses to go along with the plot, Criston murders him, proving his loyalty to the Hightowers and earning the rank of Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Alicent's loyal and scheming ally Larys burns down Mysaria's brothel in an attempt to shut down her network of spies and the King's Landing intel it could provide to Daemon. Otto forces all of the nobles in King's Landing to bow down to their newly crowned King Aegon, imprisoning and hanging anyone who refuses. Unfortunately, Rhaenys Velaryon is in King's Landing during the Hightower coup and is arrested for refusing to swear fealty. She is rescued by Eric Cargill, a member of the Kingsguard loyal to Rhaenyra, despite his twin brother Arik swearing loyalty to Aegon. Rhaenys and Eric arrive in Dragonstone to inform Rhaenyra of Viserys' death and the coup staged by the Hightowers and their Green Council. This news shocks and devastates Rhaenyra, who is now pregnant with Daemon's child, but she tragically goes into premature labor and delivers a stillborn baby. Despite her weakened state, the inhabitants of Dragonstone, including the bitter Corlys and Rhaenys Velaryon, rally around Rhaenyra as their queen and support her son Jace as her heir. As Daemon calls for Rhaenyra's Black faction to go to war with the Hightower Greens to take back King's Landing, the young princes Jace and Luke are sent on their dragons to rally support from all of the noble houses in Westeros. Luke arrives and storms in to persuade Lord Boros Baratheon to pledge his allegiance to Rhaenyra, but unfortunately discovers that Aemon Targaryen has already arrived to convince House Baratheon to instead support King Aegon. As Luke leaves on Dragonback, the vengeful Aemon attacks with his own dragon, seeking retribution for Luke slashing out his eye years ago. But instead of a simple eye for an eye, Aemon's dragon Vhagar disobeys its rider's commands and devours both Luke and his dragon, killing them instantly. Rhaenyra is devastated upon learning of her son's death, the first of many deaths in a war that will soon be known as the Dance of Dragons. In Season 2 of House of the Dragon, Jace Targaryen arrives at the Wall, where he befriends Lord Cregan Stark of Winterfell, who pledges 2,000 Northmen to back Queen Rhaenyra's claim to the Iron Throne. Unfortunately, the celebration of this new alliance is short-lived, as Jace receives word of his brother Luke's death. Jace then returns home to Dragonstone to be by his grieving mother's side. In King's Landing, the small council discusses defense measures against Queen Rhaenyra's inevitable retaliatory attack. Although King Aegon rules over this session, he is distracted by his young son Jaehaerys, who he proudly and lovingly brings everywhere as his shadow to start early training for his eventual ascension to the Iron Throne. Meanwhile, Alicent is struggling to assert herself amidst the scheming men surrounding her. The obsessive Larys has employed his loyal spies to fill every position within Alicent's household, leaving her with no one to trust. Alicent feels great remorse over Luke's death and tries to encourage peace talks with Rhaenyra. Instead, her father Otto, the Hand of the King, encourages Aegon to prepare for war. As Queen Rhaenyra continues to mourn the death of her son, the Velaryon fleet enforces a shipping blockade in the waters around King's Landing, cutting the Greens off from vital food and supplies. As the small folk begin to suffer and starve in King's Landing, they start to feel bitter toward King Aegon for his failure to help them. As Mysaria tries to escape the capital, she is caught by the blockade and imprisoned at Dragonstone. Daemon, thirsting for violence, seeks Mysaria's help in acquiring vengeance for Luke's death. Daemon sneaks into King's Landing and pays the assassins blood and cheese to murder Aemond, claiming the act to be a son for a son. When the assassins fail to find Aemon, they instead set their sights on King Aegon's young son Jaehaerys, brutally murdering him in front of his mother Helaena. Criston Cole, as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, feels great shame and regret over this murder, having failed to properly protect the king's heir due to him being preoccupied by a secret affair with Alicent. Aegon is distraught over his son's death and vows vengeance against Rhaenyra. Otto coldly uses this tragedy as a plot to garner public sympathy toward the Greens. Upon learning that one of the assassins was a rat catcher, but not knowing their specific identity, Aegon calls for every rat catcher in the city to be hanged. Otto rebukes this act, worrying it will upset the small folk when they are already suffering due to the blockade. In turn, Aegon angrily removes his grandfather as Hand of the King and replaces him with Criston Cole, then installs Larys as his Master of Whisperers. Criston Cole sends the Kingsguard Auric Cargill to infiltrate Dragonstone, posing as his twin brother Eric to assassinate Rhaenyra. At Dragonstone, Rhaenyra is furious at Daemon for the assassination of the young and innocent Jaehaerys. Feeling disrespected and untrusted, Daemon departs Dragonstone to rally troops for Team Black in the Riverlands. Rhaenyra then questions the imprisoned Mysaria over her involvement in Daemon's various plots before eventually granting her freedom. But as the White Worm leaves, she spots Auric arriving to carry out his own assassination plot. Mysaria alerts the guards, leading to Eric intervening to save Rhaenyra. The twin brothers engage in a brutal fight that ends in both of their deaths. Having earned Rhaenyra's trust, Mysaria is then appointed to the Queen's Small Council. After Rhaenys suggests appealing to Alicent to prevent the war from ever starting, Mysaria helps Rhaenyra sneak into King's Landing. There, the old friends Rhaenyra and Alicent are finally reunited. Rhaenyra realizes that Alicent had misunderstood Viserys' dying words about Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy, believing them to mean her son Aegon was meant to sit the Iron Throne. Despite now realizing this mistake, Alicent proclaims that it is too late for either side to stop the coming war. In his quest to win the support of the Lords of the Riverlands, Daemon arrives at the Castle Harrenhal, which is now run by Sir Simon Strong. Simon pledges his allegiance to Rhaenyra's Team Black, vowing vengeance against his grandnephew Larys for the deaths of Lionel and Harwin. While staying at Harrenhal, Daemon is plagued by strange visions, which force him to confront his deepest desires, including his thirst for the Iron Throne. Daemon is also warned by Alice Rivers, a bastard of House Strong and supposed witch, that he will one day die on these very castle grounds. Amidst this inner conflict, Daemon must also contend with settling disputes between local houses, like the longtime rivals Blackwoods and Brackens, in order to gain the support of all of the Riverlands. Daemon sides with the Blackwoods, and in exchange for them pledging troops to Team Black, he consents to Willem Blackwood leading a party to viciously slaughter countless Brackens on their own land. This callous act leads to the other local lords rebuking Daemon and revoking their support. Fearing for her younger children's lives in the event that she loses the upcoming war, Rhaenyra sends Joffrey, Aegon the Younger, and Viserys, alongside a chest of 4 dragon eggs, to the Eyrie for protection in the care of Lady Jane Arryn. To further ensure their safety, Rhaenyra also sends Daemon's daughter Rhaena, who has grown bitter over being the only dragonless member of her family. Aegon sends Criston Cole to lead an army to take back Harrenhal for Team Green. Accompanying Criston is Alicent's brother Gwaine. Despite the king's orders, Criston secretly conspires with Aemon to instead capture the stronghold of Rook's Rest. Aegon is furious about Aemon and Criston scheming behind his back, but upon confronting Aemon, he is only further publicly humiliated. When Aegon seeks comfort from his mother, a depressed Alicent instead counters that he lacks the wisdom to be a great king, and should leave decisions to the small council. Drunken and bitter, Aegon flies off on his dragon Sunfire to join the Battle of Rook's Rest and claim the glory for himself. Upon learning of the Green's assault on Rook's Rest, Jace declares his desire to fly into battle. Not wanting to risk losing another son, Rhaenyra forbids and plans to take flight herself, but Rhaenys talks the queen out of this risky act, volunteering to fly her own dragon Meleys into battle. Before departing, Rhaenys bids an emotional farewell to her husband Corlys Velaryon, and confesses to knowing of his 2 secret bastard sons, Alan and Adam. With their legitimate children dead, Rhaenys encourages Corlys to ignore any shame of publicly claiming his sons as his own, and elevate them to their proper status as heirs of Driftmark. Rhaenys then flies into the Battle of Rook's Rest, commanding Meleys to decimate the Green soldiers. Unfortunately, this was all a part of a trap set by Aemon in the hopes of using Vhagar to kill the dragons of Team Black. When Aegon flies into battle, Aemon coldly has Vhagar attack both Rhaenys and his own brother. Aegon and Sunfire are critically injured and crash into the ground, while Vhagar kills Meleys in the air, sending Rhaenys plummeting to her death. As Criston Cole surveys the carnage of the battlefield, he catches Aemon and stops him from finishing off the mortally wounded King Aegon. Despite the Green's victory in battle, the small folk view the celebration of of the death of the dragon Meleys as a bad omen. As Aegon is left comatose, Alicent attempts to step up as Queen Regent. Instead, the small council dismiss her due to being a woman and elect Aemond to serve as regent instead. Aemond immediately rules with an iron fist, blocking starving citizens from leaving the city walls. Alicent grows concerned by Aemond's actions, while Criston keeps secret that he had witnessed Aemond's part in nearly killing Aegon. Aemond dismisses Alicent from the small council and removes Criston as Hand, calling for his grandfather Otto to return to King's Landing and reassume the role, though on his way from Old Town, Otto is caught by a mystery enemy. Aemond then sends Criston to Harrenhal to reclaim it from Daemon, and sends Lord Tywin Lannister to forge an alliance with the Triarchy to help break the Velaryon blockade. As Criston departs, he confesses to Egwene that he has lost hope in their fight, as this war will surely end in the frivolous deaths of himself and countless others. When Larys is completely dismissed by Aemond, he turns to the ailing Aegon, encouraging him that though his body is broken, his mind is still strong. As Corlys mourns Rhaenys, he becomes inspired by his wife's strength and informs his granddaughter Baela of his desire to appoint her as heir to Driftmark, despite her being a woman. Baela refuses this honor, considering herself a Targaryen, and claiming a true Velaryon should hold their family's seat. Corlys then promotes Alan to become his first mate, but Alan rejects any further titles or relationship with his father, as Corlys never cared for his bastard sons while his legitimate children were still living. While reckoning with this, Corlys is named by Rhaenyra as her new hand of the Queen. Jace grows frustrated that he is constantly sidelined by his mother during the war, and seeks comfort in his betrothed Baela. Without Rhaenyra's consent, Jace flies off to forge an alliance with Lord Frey, who allows his bridge across the Trident to be used by Cregan Stark's army in their journey from the north to the south. Rhaenyra praises her son's actions and finally brings him into her innermost circle. She reveals to Jace Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire, and together the mother and son realize that their best weapons to use against the Greens are their advantage in number of dragons. And so Rhaenyra and Jace begin searching Dragonstone's records in the hopes of finding distant living members of the Targaryen bloodline who may possess the ability to claim one of the riderless dragons. Mysaria begins sending much needed food and supplies to the small folk of King's Landing, leading to their praise of Queen Rhaenyra and further disdain toward the Greens. As Rhaenyra grows closer to Mysaria, the pair even share a kiss. Elsewhere, Laenor's long riderless dragon Seasmoke chooses the secret Velaryon Adam to be his new rider. Adam pledges his loyalty as a dragon rider to Rhaenyra, though keeps secret that Corlys is his father. Following this, Mysaria suggests that Rhaenyra turn her dragonseed search to low-born Targaryen bastards living in King's Landing. Jace initially rejects this idea, shamed by his own status as the bastard of Harwin Strong. Mysaria sends the call throughout King's Landing for anyone claiming to have Targaryen blood to come to Dragonstone and try their hand at claiming a dragon. These supposed dragon seeds include the lowly blacksmith Hugh Hammer, who is grieving the death of his young daughter due to the lack of medicine in King's Landing, and the drunken and boastful Ulf the White, who claims to be the secret bastard half-brother of Viserys and Daemon. At Dragonstone, these seeds are presented to the large and temperamental dragon Vermithor, who angrily begins slaughtering them all. Amidst the carnage, Hugh selflessly steps in to save a defenseless woman, and his bravery earns Vermithor's respect, allowing him to claim the dragon for himself. As a terrified Ulf flees the chaos, he stumbles across the dragon Silverwing, who claims him as her rider. In King's Landing, Aemon presides over his small council, satisfied by the word that his younger brother Daeron is returning home to join the war with his dragon Tyrion, after having spent his life training in Old Town. Aemon is immediately humbled by the revelation that Team Black has acquired two new dragon riders in Hugh and Ulf, though Alicent finds comfort from her brother Gwaine, who assures her that Daeron has grown to be strong, noble, and kind, unlike her other sons. Following his setbacks, Aemon angrily tries to pressure his sister Helaena to join the war with her dragon Dreamfire. Helaena refuses and claims to have seen visions of Aemon's coming death. Fearing the increasingly power-hungry Aemon will soon kill Aegon to take full control of the Iron Throne, Larys helps Aegon flee King's Landing to hide out until he can regain his strength. In the Vale, Lady Jane Eyre reveals to Rhaena that a wild dragon roams the surrounding area. Jane also reveals that the Prince of Pentos has agreed to shelter Rhaenyra's youngest sons, Viserys and Aegon the Younger. As the young princelings depart, Rhaena heads off on her own to find and claim the wild dragon for herself. At Harrenhal, Daemon seeks to align with House Tully, though its leader Lord Grover Tully is too old and weak. And so Alice kills him, elevating his young heir Oscar to Lord Paramount of the Riverlands. The new Lord Oscar pledges the Riverland support for Rhaenyra, but demands that Daemon take Willem Blackwood's head for his attacks against the Brackens. Sir Alfred Broom, an emissary sent by Rhaenyra to ensure Daemon remains in line, instead betrays his queen and pledges his support for Daemon to claim the Iron Throne for himself. Alice helps Daemon see a vision of Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy, which emboldens Daemon to embrace his destiny and resolve to thwart the fated White Walker invasion. And so Daemon finally rededicates himself to his wife Rhaenyra, prompting Broom to flee to avoid punishment for treason. As the season comes to a close, Rhaenyra readies her army, now accompanied by the dragon riders Adam, Hugh, and Ulf, as they prepare to head into battle against the Greens. Before they depart, Alicent arrives in Dragonstone to appeal to her former friend. Wanting no more innocent bloodshed, Alicent vows to help Rhaenyra take the Iron Throne, in exchange for her and her children being allowed to live. Rhaenyra agrees, but only on the condition that Aegon be killed to ensure her uncontested claim to the throne. Alicent reluctantly agrees and swears that in 3 days' time, the gates of King's Landing will open for Rhaenyra to peacefully claim the Iron Throne. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and why not check out this recommended video while you're at it.